Hello guys and welcome back to another video, and today we are in the final episode of What If History Started Over. Season 1, of course. We're going to continue this, but every 10 episodes is going to be a season, so the season finale is going to be really hype. Let's get started. Italia. Recently, in the past episode, they lost a chunk of land up here, which formed into Germany. They lost their biggest general, or the best general so far in this history. They need something new, something better. So, eventually, through decades of waiting, they finally have another great general. Now, they want to wage a war to get all of the Mediterranean all in one big swoop. So now they're slowly building up, but the Germans will be warning. So in this episode, we're going to be covering the Mega War, the first Great War, and it'll actually be color-coded this time. On the red team, we have Italia, and on the blue team, we have literally everybody else, besides for like Britain and like the other countries that aren't necessarily a part of the Mediterranean. So, will Italia manage to win the war? That's what this episode is going to be about. A great finale. Up here in Europe, at the northernmost point, the general's going to tell their army to push in. Now there's fierce resistance from the Germans here. Like absolute fierce resistance. In fact, they will eventually get the Russian state to join in hopes that they can annex more land. And Italia is being pushed into now. This is not good for Italia, considering that, well, now they have a multi-front war, which is never fun. So, let's see how good they do against Germany up here. The general, of course I get a text right now. Sorry about that, I just got a text in the most inconvenient timing. The general will sweep through the lowlands and is now going to push towards Berlin. The troops mount huge resistance, but with a huge offensive maneuver, they managed to capture the capital. Germania will not surrender so fast, and in this time, the other states managed to push in harder against Italia. So they managed to cut the Germans into two. They send a battalion up here, and Denmark, or where modern day Denmark would fall decently quick. Over here in Iberia, they managed to whoop nearly half of it, and they would take the Canary Islands as well. This is not looking at all any good for Italia. This war could shatter them. This war could absolutely demolish them from existing. They could shatter from this war. But the general, despite the odds, will eventually take over some more cities and get Germany to surrender. So now they have a choice. Which front do they worry about now? Iberia or the Balkans? I'd say they worry about the Balkans, because that's the most fierce resistance as of right now. They managed to push them back, but they leave a spot open, which leaves them room to flood in some troops. Not like that much, but like they flood in and try to do an encirclement, which would go successful. But the forces weren't really there, so they get cut off, and eventually they have to surrender. They doom themselves. They eventually get to push in to where the modern day Ukraine would be. They push into the Russian state, and now they are going to go and capture their capital is the idea, but down here there's more resistance. So they set up a stalemate along that front and push down to manage to sweep through and knock back the front. From here, Italia will push in. Also, during all this fighting, the entirety of Iberia has fallen. Now they have to spread out their troops. This is not looking good. Not at all. So, yeah, their next goal is to push out this nation by spearheading towards their capital, which they eventually capture. The spearhead is mounted, but it's eventually, before it hits there, it gets cut off and eventually gets stopped right in its place. But over here in the Russian state, they managed to capture the capital, which doesn't cause the surrender, as they're not that foolish. But it is still a big blow. Over here in Iberia, they managed to push over the mountains now. But the new troops, he hires a second general, and the general's decent enough to hold off in Iberia for the time being. Now, the great general has a plan. Split down here and split them into two. Therefore, their supply lines get cut off and all of that. The great plan has been done, and they managed to gain a bunch more land by doing so. And now they just have around Crimea and so. So now they push in, and eventually they capture Crimea. And through one silly naval invasion, they capture that. Now, to focus on this front. They smashed their forces on through and are about to lay siege to the capital. But over here where modern day Greece is, they managed to just smash right through, taking everything. They even started a foothold on Cyprus. We'll get back to that later. But now they flood, the blue team's flooding in troops into the Balkans, like from everywhere. Like they're flooding in troops all over the place to make sure that this city does not fall to the wrong hand. They managed to get a stalemate along the front line, and the siege of the city is going to start. Now during all this fighting, Italia has managed to wipe out their forces. Like, a lot of men have been slaughtered in this war. Like, it's not even a competition here. Italia is just built different. But can they keep it up? The Mercian Empire is going to have naval capabilities, so they managed to take Corsica, Sardinia, and Sicily from Italia. From then, they start a front on Sicily, but managed to push them out of it. Over here in Cyprus, they managed to capture the whole island, which is where the Kingdom of the Nile has been storing. And decades, well not decades, but years and years will pass. The front not changing, but tons of men dying. It looks like Italia might be on the verge of breaking. So, they need someone to join the war, and quick, or else they are going to lose. Over here in Asia, there's only one candidate, and they are willing to join. They join the war on the side of Italia to gain land from Persia. They start flooding on in to try to take all their coastal territories. Now, Persia has to pull troops. They managed to do a pretty good impressive feat over here. In fact, they make another naval landing over here, almost getting near Persia's capital. But back in Europe, the Iberian front goes successful as Italia manages to push across the mountains. They also are starting to build new naval technology, which allows them to take back these islands. And this technology would not be too far off from what they did in the First Punic War. So, with all this technology being done, we're going to enter a new age. The age of inventing. But with the Polish troops, they managed to push on in. And Istanbul is almost about to be sieged as well. After years and years of being in a siege, the city finally falls to Italia. The forces over here managed to push up, and now they are also sieging the capital. But this time, the capital of Persia. Will it be successful? We will find out later. Over on this front, they managed to make significant ground. And it's starting to look like the red team are just bound to win. I mean, they knocked out 3 countries so far. Well, nearly 3 countries. Persia could fall very soon, but we'll see about that. I guess technically 3. Considering that the Kingdom of the Nile was still in Cyprus and that fell. You can count that, I guess. Iberia gets pushed back some more. And now, here's where the British are going to do their first plays. It's not just a war episode. They want to colonize. So they managed to colonize what we call Iceland, and they named that Greenland. This is definitely going to get confusing for the future me to understand. And they also try to colonize where modern day Oslo and Norway is. Or at least the good land here. And this is where they're going to set up their new border along here. So we have another country expanding other than just this war for the finale, or the season 1 finale at least. Iberia manages to get demolished, absolutely slapped around. The siege finally ends and the city falls. But they change their capital. It's now Tehran, or where modern day Tehran would be. So their siege kind of didn't do much. Or did it? They knocked out millions of men. And yes, I am talking in modern time standards. When it comes to populations, we're going to say that they're very populated. Just because the war scenarios need a lot of men. A lot of population to go off. So that's what I'm going to go with. But they managed to make really hard pushes against Persia. And now they need to push up and get Tehran. Over here in Iberia, they would manage to push them all the way out in just a couple years, I'd say. They're no longer ready to fight Africa. They managed to push in Istanbul Falls, and they will push around the sides. Italia is never stopped. They managed to get them to surrender. And now, just a few countries remain. They eventually managed to get a smart general down here, who decides the best course of action would be to push up and get Tehran. Now, this is a highly populated area. Keep that in mind. So they managed to do a spearhead up, and they eventually managed to pull off a decent siege of Tehran. I'm probably mispronouncing that. And yet, probably. And now they start getting a foothold in Africa. But that won't go too far, as they're not prepared for the African terrain. But with their new naval technologies, they'd managed to get some naval stuff done here. In fact, they managed to lay siege to the capital of the entire, and I mean the entire merchant empire. Everything is at play here. Anything could happen. And after a while, the siege ends. Persia has fallen. This war is hopeless for them. So they finally decide to all surrender. Only a few countries not impacted by this war, the Caucasus, Britain, and all these other countries in Asia, have not been affected. If we want to talk about tribal stuff or native stuff not being affected, we'll go in North America and talk about over here. These were not affected. They don't even know what happens over here. So now with the war over, we need to discuss the final peace deal for the first season. This is going to decide what happens next. This is a huge important thing. Over here in Europe, Italia manages to reconquer Germania. They managed to get Iberia under control, and they have a foothold in Africa. The merchant empire will still live on, of course. Italia will take a huge chunk from the Balkans. And now I need to redraw where the borderline will be, because Italia sweeps through. They take as much land as they can possibly bargain for. They are not holding back by any means. By any definition, they are not holding back in this peace deal. They want everybody dead. So now I just need to make these borders look better, all that. A lot of people say they want to do their own series. Hey, good for you. I won't reject your idea. In fact, this isn't even my idea. I got inspired by Ada's Pro, but we can't own What If History Started Over. Nobody can own that. FYI. Go ahead. Do it to your heart's content. But they don't manage to get everything that they wanted. They still had to do some bargaining. Before fighting one war, they did a very impressive amount of land. But this isn't the end of the peace deal. We still have to deal with Persia. They managed to take a huge chunk over here and a huge chunk down here. They're going to be forced to put their capital back over here. And they managed to get a foothold and some more chunks of land taken. But overall, Persia isn't massively impacted by losing this war. And that will be it for this first season. If you're excited, smash that like button. Get ready for season 2 to come across. Give me more ideas and suggestions in the comments. I might take a break from this for a day or two. I'll try to pump out other content while I wait for some more ideas to flood in. And for now, see ya.